Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Why do we celebrate Valentine? What is the real historical truth about this occasion? Who brought it? Is there any hidden agenda for this occasion? The true origin of Valentine's Day didn't come for another 1,000 years. The poet Geoffrey Chaucer was the first person to link Valentine's Day to romance in his poem The Parliament of Fowls. Historians suggest that Chaucer might have linked Valentine's Day to romance more or less by chance. Valentine's Day is approximately the time when European birds start mating. Later poets, including Shakespeare, followed Chaucer's lead and helped create the romantic connotations we have today. But why did the Roman Catholics name it after a man called Valentine? Was it even named after one man or two? Because about the incident that happened, there wasn't one Valentine at the scene. There were two priests. So, which one of them are they calling a saint? And why do they call this man or men a saint? Do they even deserve that name tag? Well, Valentine's Day today is the time of year when love is in the air, chocolates fly off the shelves and red roses are practically everywhere. But what if I told you this so-called Day of Love has a much darker past? A past drenched in blood, mystery and bizarre rituals that might just make you rethink that candlelit dinner. To fully grasp the reality of this celebration, let's visit the roots of this whole Valentine's Day thing, going back to ancient Rome, where it all began. From February 13th to the 15th, or as the Romans would say, ante diem tertium idus februarius to idus februarius, they celebrated a wild festival called Lupercalia. Now forget chocolates and teddy bears. Lupercalia was more like a chaotic mix of fertility rites and pagan madness. Men slaughtering goats and dogs, smearing the fresh blood on their foreheads, and then, get this, running through the streets, whipping women with the hides of these freshly sacrificed animals, all in the name of Lupercalia. So what's behind this Lupercalia? In ancient times, let's say around the 6th century BC, according to Roman legend, the ancient king Amulius ordered Romulus and Remus, his twin nephews and founders of Rome, to be thrown into the Tiber River to drown in retribution for their mother's broken vow of celibacy. A servant took pity on them, however, and placed them inside a basket on the river instead. The river god carried the basket and the brothers downriver to a wild fig tree where it became caught in the branches. The brothers were then rescued and cared for by a she-wolf in a den at the base of Palatine Hill, where Rome was founded. The twins were later adopted by a shepherd and his wife and learned their father's trade. After killing the uncle, who'd ordered their death, they found the cave den of the she-wolf, who'd nurtured them and named it Lupercal. It's thought Lupercalia took place to honor the she-wolf and please the Roman fertility god Lupercus. Lupercalia rituals took place in a few places. Lupercal Cave on Palatine Hill, and within the Roman open air, public meeting place called the Comitium. The festival began at Lupercal Cave with the sacrifice of one or more male goats, a representation of sexuality, and a dog. No wonder sex immorality is abundant during this period. The sacrifices were performed by Luperci, a group of Roman priests. Afterwards, the foreheads of two naked Luperci were smeared with the animal's blood using the bloody sacrificial knife. The blood was then removed with a piece of milk-soaked wool as the Luperci laughed. In ancient Rome, feasting began after the ritual sacrifice. When the feast of Lupercal was over, the Luperci cut strips, also called thongs or februa, of goat hide from the newly sacrificed goats. They then ran naked, or nearly naked, around Palatine, whipping any woman within striking distance with the thongs. During Lupercalia, the men randomly chose a woman's name from a jar to be coupled with them for the duration of the festival. Often the couple stayed together until the following year's festival. Many fell in love and married. Over time, nakedness during Lupercalia lost popularity. The festival became more chaste, if still undignified, and women were whipped on their hands by fully clothed men. The Roman romantics were drunk and they enjoyed beating the women. Now check this. According to Noel Lenski, a historian at the University of Colorado at Boulder, Lupercalia was clearly a very popular thing, even in an environment where the Christians are trying to close it down. So there's reason to think that the Christians might instead have said, okay, we'll just call this a Christian festival, he said. And this could be true. They just found a way to Christianize the pagan ritual by calling it Valentine. Let's see how the name Valentine came about. So picture this. Rome was under the rule of Emperor Claudius II, also known as Claudius the Cruel, back in the 3rd century. Why cruel? Well, he loved war and wanted a strong, unbeatable army, but he had a theory. Married men made bad soldiers because they were too attached to their wives and families. His solution? Ban marriage altogether for young men. Enter Valentine, a priest, or possibly a bishop, who just couldn't stand by and watch love get outlawed. Secretly, he married couples in defiance of the emperor's orders. Imagine these young lovers, desperate to be together, slipping into a dimly lit chapel while Valentine performed the sacred ceremony, knowing that getting caught could mean death. Well, as you can guess, the Roman authorities eventually found out. Valentine was arrested, dragged before the emperor, and thrown into prison. But here's where the story gets even more interesting. While in prison, Valentine became friends with his jailer, who had a blind daughter. Some say he even performed a miracle and restored her sight. The jailer and his family became devoted to him, visiting him in his dark cell as he awaited execution. Then, on the eve of his execution, February 14th, 269 AD, he wrote a love letter to this same girl. At the end, he signed it, "From your Valentine." Sounds familiar? Yep. That's possibly where the tradition of signing love letters that way comes from. Sadly, Valentine's defiance came at a price. On February 14th, he was beaten, stoned, and then beheaded. A brutal end for a man who stood for love. His body was buried in Rome, and over time he was honored as a Christian martyr. But wait, which Valentine? Here's a twist. There wasn't just one saint, Valentine. There were actually several men named Valentine in early Christian history, and at least 2 others were also executed by the Romans. This might be why the legends around him are a little blurry. While our first Valentine was busy defying the Roman emperor in Rome, another Valentine was doing his thing in Terni, a town about 60 miles away. This Valentine was a bishop, and some believe he might actually be the same person as the Roman Valentine, just with different stories attached to him. But the Terni version has a slightly different story. Instead of performing secret marriages, this Valentine was known for healing people. One of his miracles included curing a nobleman's crippled son, which instantly made him popular. Unfortunately, that also made him a target for the pagan Roman officials, who weren't too fond of Christians performing miracles. Just like the other Valentine, he was arrested, tortured, and eventually beheaded. And then, guess what? His execution also happened on February 14th. That's not all. There is this one called Saint Valentine of Africa. Now, this guy is even more mysterious. Saint Valentine of Africa was a Christian who was martyred with a group of companions in Africa. The problem? We know almost nothing about him. No love stories, no miracles, no handwritten letters. All we have is a mention of his name in ancient Christian records, noting that he was killed for his faith. Some historians think he might have been executed by Roman officials during one of the empire's many crackdowns on Christians. So, while his connection to Valentine's Day is weak, he's still on the list of possible inspirations for the holiday. So we ask you, when you celebrate Valentine's, which of these men or saints are you celebrating? Is it the one from Africa, Terni, or Rome? What we know is that before the Catholics will call someone a saint, the person is believed to have entered heaven after death. How are they sure of this? They say that saints are no different from anyone else in heaven, but the title changes as to how they're venerated on earth. The Catholic Church mostly erects shrines to them or designate days in their honor. So on the part of these many Valentines, they believe they entered heaven directly after death. That's why they call them saints. Fast forward to the 5th century, the Catholic Church under Pope Gelasius I officially declared February 14th as St. Valentine's feast day. Some historians think this was a way to replace the wild pagan festival, Lupercalia, which was very bloody and profane. So once again we ask, would you still celebrate Valentine's Day again? And which of the Valentines are you celebrating?